I want to kind of talk about the concept of ketosis. Some of you guys might have heard this. When we do there's a diet or a model, you could say, of nutrition, you could call it, which is called the ketogenic diet. In the ketogenic diet, basically, you eat foods that are usually protein-based or fat-based, and you have very little proportion of carbohydrate-based foods. So, in a sense, what happens when you're doing the ketogenic diet is that you are slowly starving your body of carbohydrates, but you are providing it with fats and proteins. The body typically will burn sugars as its energy source. Sugar is a very easily accessible energy source, glucose, for the body. And it is in most foods. So whether you're eating, for example, pasta or rice, bread, obviously sugar itself, might like in chocolate or something like that, cereals, grains, legumes have sometimes high in carbohydrates. So basically, carbohydrates break down into sugars and glucose, and that is a very easily accessible unit of energy for the body to use. Now, if you starve the body of that, the body actually doesn't stop working because it can access another source of energy, fats. Fats are also able to be converted into energy. But the thing with fats is that they aren't as readily accessible, is what I understand. In other words, there's a process required in order to unlock the fat cell to release the energy. This is kind of my layman's understanding, but hopefully, you can, if you know more about this, please forgive my my explanation, but hopefully it's still accurate. So essentially, when we starve the body of carbohydrates, the fat is called upon to energize and provide us with the energy we need for the day. And so what happens is that something is needed to be created in your liver called ketones. Ketones are like a key that unlocks that fat cell and allows us to use the energy inside. So you can see that using fats is an extra process that isn't really required when you're using sugars. But the thing is, there's a big advantage to this, right? There's a big advantage to being in ketosis. It helps with detoxifying your body of toxins that you've accumulated. There is a more consistent energy level when you're using fats, as in you won't get the highs and lows as much of being sugar dependent for your energy. There are a lot of benefits you can look up to being in ketosis and doing the ketogenic diet, for example. Not weight loss, for example, and other things, but that's not the focus for us here. What I want to look at, though, is the concept of psychological ketosis, the concept of what I've just shared with you in the body, to look at it from a psychological lens. Just like the body has two fuels, I would say that our actions also have two fuels. The first fuel is our thoughts and emotions. These are like the glucose. They are ready to motivate your action, in the moment. And I've got like a lightning bolt symbol there to represent, like, thoughts just come in, and influence what you do, it's a very quick process. If you've done CBT before, you probably have talked to clients about this. The idea that, you walk into a cafe and you walk in and everyone turns and looks at you, and you have the thought, they're judging me, I don't belong here, you feel embarrassed. You leave before you've even had a chance to really sit with that thought. I'm saying it's not necessarily you, but that you can see that that's possible, that process takes place so quickly. Thought, emotion, action. Another example is, I don't know, you go, and I'll use the chocolate example. You go and you go and look for that piece of chocolate that you're really hoping for, and then you look in the fridge and it's not there, and you find out your partner ate it, and all of a sudden you're saying or you're doing things on the basis of what you think and feel in that moment. It is a very quick, easily accessible, readily usable energy source for action, is our thoughts and emotions in the moment. But they are not the only energy source for what you do. There is another energy source potentially available to us. Our values. You can't see it, sorry, under this thing, but if you've got the slide separately, you'll be able to see in that square it says values. Our values are another source for our actions. And let me just ask you, can you think of a time in your life where you had a thought and an emotion to act a certain way, but you found yourself being able to do something different. Like maybe you got up and your alarm went off and you thought, I'm just going to call in sick today. I can't be bothered going in. And your emotions were fatigue and feeling quite maybe stressed or overwhelmed about what you had on, but you still went, in a sense. Or a time where you had a thought and emotion to do something that would feel really good or enjoyable, but you chose not to because of a value behind it, in yourself, a value you hold. So you can see that we, like the body has two fuels, I believe we also kind of had two fuels in this light, your thoughts and emotions, your values, two things that can lead our behavior. And just like the fat cells, values require a couple extra processes to access, to unlock that as the source of energy for action. And some of these processes are going to be talked about in the other talks when we get to talking about acceptance and diffusion. And in a sense, you could kind of see that unlocking values requires at least an ingestion of them. Just like using fat as an energy source, you need it present. You need it present in your body, and you need it coming into your body in order to tap into ketosis. In the same way, you need a connection with what you value and not in the opposite of a remoteness from it. You need an awareness of them and a daily awareness of them to be able to have them influence your actions too. So hopefully this little analogy makes sense, is that this is what we're talking about when we talk about value. So I guess I'm saying, what it makes sense to pursue what feels good and to avoid what feels bad to some degree. And I guess I'm saying why would we want a different compass, so to speak?
Yeah, of course it makes sense to want to feel good and be symptom free and, to walk into a room of people without anxiety and just be able to say whatever you want, or not feel like you don't want to get out of bed because there's a heaviness. There's nothing wrong with the pursuit of happiness. Like, you have a very short time here, and I love the experience of joy myself. And even though I'm a very strong person in, thinking about things from the perspective of values versus feeling good, I like feeling good, right? Like that's a nice thing. It's very rewarding, and it usually happens, or quite often, not always, but in the company of others. And when you're feeling good, you're often in the present moment. So there's stuff inherently built into it, I think, that speak to what we're talking about. The issue is that life just isn't going to offer us that on a continual basis. It's not going to, provide us with ongoing, regular moments of happiness. If we're going to love, we're going to feel pain, and if we're going to relate to other people, we're going to have our fears and our anxieties about not being related to back, or being rejected, or not part of the group. And I suppose what I'm pointing to here is the, human experience of loss and fear and stuff that just comes along with like being on this planet. And so if happiness isn't the, once made recipe that you are always eating that cake, then how else are we going to show up and be present? And either walk around trying to reject part of our life by not feeling pain, or we can open up to the full experience of life and make opportunity for both joy and pain, rather than just fighting pain all the time.
So if I'm hearing you right, just to kind of summarize what I'm hearing, is that it's like you said, it makes sense, and it actually feels good to pursue what feels good, and that would be fine. The difficulty comes in that is not if it was a compass, it's not one that's always accessible. It's not always possible, in a sense. There are, in fact, the more you care about something, like the idea that the more you care about it, there's the chance that it will cause more and more difficult feelings for you when what you want doesn't show up. And so you're kind of saying that that's where the values piece comes in for clients, is that it's a more reliable foundation for direction in your life than this, which is kind of like the weather. You know, sunny days aren't always there. Is that sort of on the right track to what you're saying?
Well, it's not only that sunny days aren't always there, of course,
Mm,
they're not going to be, but that even in the very process of doing the things that bring us happiness, I think that bring us happiness, connecting, being present to anything living, is that it's going to get lost. It will be gone. And
mm,
we experience that loss, I think, in significant ways. And the only way to love it is to also recognize the pain of losing it. And
yeah.
so that piece, I think, is really feeds into what brings us meaning. I mean, if
Mm,
anybody listening sort of looks across their lifespan at some of their most meaningful and cherished moments, I would wager that there's a fair number of them that are not about joy,
no.
and maybe even a fair number of them that are painful, but still
Mm,
incredibly meaningful and important, and not experiences that people would switch out for other experiences. They'd keep those because of the depth
mm.
in being an emotion and connection that they've felt in those moments.